You're listening to the Player Layer podcast. I'm your host, Ivan Alexiev, and today I've got with me Bruno Cathala, who is an amazing game designer. He's been doing game design for the past 20 years, and in that time he's produced some amazing games. He's collaborated with a ton of designers, and we were able to go really in-depth on his process and the specifics of a lot of games which he's made. On a small note, there were some sound problems that we had, which because my neighbors are renovating, so I have edited it out as much as possible, and just know that towards the middle of the podcast, you're going to hear some renovation, but it'll go away quick, and hopefully it's not too bad. So thanks for listening, and enjoy this episode with Bruno Cathala. I'm here with Bruno Cathala today, who is one of my favorite designers. He's designed games and worked on games such as Five Tribes, Seven Wonders Duel, Yamatai, King Domino, Abyss, Mission Red Planet, Raptor, Shadows over Camelot, a ton of games, a lot of which, and that's not even half of them that I just mentioned. How are you doing today?
Fine. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be able to discuss with gamers anywhere in the world. So yes, I'm really happy to discuss with you.
Yeah, and I'm really happy as well. To start off, I want to ask you about how you first got into game design and how you first got into games.
Well, I always was a player since as far as I remember. But when I was young, I have no idea about modern board games. In fact, I was just knowing the grand classics like chess, Othello, etc. And I loved that. And I discovered that there was a life after Monopoly when I was something like 20, just because a friend of my parents offered me a French magazine which was named Jeux et Stratégie, Games and Strategy. It was really a surprise for me, and I bought my first game, which was Fief, which still exists today. Mm-hmm. And I love so much that game. And what was surprising to me is that this game was published because the game designer won a game design contest. So for the first time of my life, I discovered that there were people designing games. I never thought about that before. And at this age, when I was 20, I promised myself one day to make my own game and to be published. But at this time, I had absolutely no idea what to do, because the only ideas which could came into my mind were some chess variants, in fact. Just because I fed my head only with such kind of games. So it was clear to me that it was absolutely not sufficient to propose something like this on the market. So I go on my life. I make my studies. I came into the industry because I became an engineer in material sciences. I worked in research and development, which is very close to what I'm doing today, but in another field. I built a family. I was really involved in sports. I was playing rugby, etc. So for a lot of years, I had no time to think about game design. But during all this time, I was always connected to games, buying games, teaching them to my friends, offering games to friends, etc. And during this time, I learned a lot of things about games, but without really thinking about that. And in 1999, I broke my knee. That means that it was not possible to me to play rugby again. And I divorced. So I was alone at home, and I thought it was a good time maybe to do what I was dreaming when I was 20. So I started to work on my first prototype, which was Sans foi ni loi in French, lawless in English. And it took some time, but my big luck was that I found a publisher for this first game. That's the story.
Yeah. I saw that the first game you have on Board Game Geek is called War and Sheep from 2002.
Yeah.
Was it published before this Lawless game?
Yes. Lawless has been made before. Mm-hmm. And then I made War and Sheep, Drake and Drake, and Tony Tino. But I signed these games with the same publisher. And for marketing reasons, he decided to publish the 2-player games before, and Lawless came maybe 3 or 4 months later. Mm-hmm. That means that I was coming from nowhere. I knew anybody. I knew nobody. In the game industry, and suddenly I had 4 games on the market. So it was crazy.
Yeah. Could you tell me, because from the games I mentioned, in most of your games you work with other designers. Could you tell me first of all, how different it is working by yourself on a game and working with somebody else on the same idea?
The first thing is that creating means doubting. Doubting with someone else is much more comfortable than doubting alone. The second thing is that, like I explained before, I worked before a lot of time in research, in development, in material sciences. You never work alone when you are making research and development. The first thing is that I started to work on my first game quite late. I was something that I was 99, I was 36. So during all this time, I had the time enough to think. And it's a common thing that everybody agrees that a writer which writes books tells quite the same story all his life. And when I started to design my first games, I didn't want to make one game. I wanted to become game designer and to stay. And I thought immediately that the best way for me not to tell always the same things into my games was to mix working alone and aside working with other designers, because your brain always come back in its comfort zone. Never mind if you want to be creative or not, it comes back in your comfort zone. So working with someone else is the best way to explore fields. You never go alone. So today it's very interesting to me because I'm getting older and older each year. That means that my question is, at which time my own ideas will be decoded to the market, and because I will be too old. And which is really interesting to me is that today I'm working also with young designers, and this means experience with ideas coming from young people going into fields that maybe are strange to me is a very good way to stay.
How do you go into a game? How do you decide which games to start working on? Like I talked to Mark Paquien a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he showed you the game a couple of times before you said that we're talking about Yamatai. A couple of times before you said that you were interested in working with him.
Yes, but it was, if we speak about this game Yamatai with Mark, it's quite different because we are living close and we were testing our games in the same board game cafe. Okay. And he was there with this board game, which was still built, and I was with mine. And he asked me to play with him. So, and to give him some feedback. He was creating his first game. So he didn't ask me at first to work with him and to share the game design. He just asked me for some advice. And I gave him some advice, and again and again and again. And during a lot of time, it was not a co-design because I didn't want to take his job for me. It was really important for me that if he preferred to do that. But at the end, he didn't find the good way to do it by his own. And so he asked me maybe 1.5 years later to join him and to work together. And at this time, I came deeper into the game process and we rebuilt the game together. But this is an example. But in fact, it could be a lot of different ways to work with someone else. Sometimes I have people asking me directly to work with me by mail or never mind, or on a game event. Or very often also, we meet together with other designers just to play test things, to discuss. And during a discussion, something comes and we start together at the same time. And sometimes I have some projects where I think that alone I will not be the best to finish the game the best way. And I ask one of my colleagues, because I think that he's the good guy to go with me on that project. So there are a lot of different situations and it depends. But to work together on a project, we need 3 things. First, to fall in love for the project. Second, to have a real good connection with your partner. It has to be a question of friendship, really. Not just we make a game. No, we have to be friends. It's very important to me because, you never know if you will be successful or not when you try. You never know if you will publish or not when you work on a game. So the path is long, it's difficult, and you have to this life experience has to be satisfying, never mind if you are published or not. So you have to have a good connection. And the first thing is you need to have free time to engage in this project. And this is today my main problem. But I think that I'm working on too much things at the same time.
Yeah. How many projects is it that you're working on? Usually
something like 15.
Wow. That's a lot.
But I'm lucky enough to be able to do that full time. Mm-hmm. Most of the other designers have a side job, so for me it's easier to have more projects because it's just my life, in fact.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that, like you said, in 1999 you went into game design knowing that you had several other failures in life with the broken knee and and the divorce, and you decided to go in and you wanted to make it full time.
No, at first, just I stop you. Just when I started in '99, I didn't want to become full-time game designer. But 4 years later, I lost my job. I was fired due to economical reasons. And in my specialty, the only factory working on that specialty in France was mine. That means that I was interesting some other people, but abroad. So I would have to move far from home, but my child were living 1 kilometer far from me. So at this time in 2004, I decided to transform my passion into a full-time job, to try to do it, just to be able to stay close to my children.
Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that you're able to do this as your full-time job and take on so many projects and with so many so many different types of projects. Could you tell me about the first ideas that you have for a game? I've heard you talk about story mechanism and components as your main influences, or the 3 influences that can start a game. But could you tell me how certain games start out, maybe with some examples?
The sparkling idea can come from 3 different ways: the story, the theme, the mechanism, or the components. But the most important is the game experience you want to create. That means that the story, the mechanism, and the components are only tools for us game designers to create a game experience. So the most important is always thinking about the game experience. The sparking idea can come from anywhere. For example, for King Domino, the sparking idea was the component. I wanted to create a modern game with using dominoes, because everybody knows dominoes since he's a child, but I never played before a domino game, which was exciting to me. So I decided to take that component to create something different, which was exciting to me, hoping that some other people will like that. For Shadows of Camelot, for example, a very different game. The sparkling idea is making a cooperative game. So it was the game experience, but where people will be free to do what they want. You can go in different ways, etc. And with maybe someone inside, we will not cooperate, but you don't know that. So this is the sparkling ideas, and then you build something. And for the mechanism, I very often start from mechanism. So because it's probably more easy for my head, my comfort zone, for example. And one of my last game, I don't know if you don't have it in Bulgaria, but it's Trek 12. Trek 12, it's a run and write game, which today it's only published in France, Switzerland, Belgium, but which will come in a few months, I hope. And the sparkling idea is just you roll 2 dice, and with these 2 dice, you can keep only the minimum value, the smallest value, the highest value, the sum, the multiplications, or the subtractions. And with that, you do something. And the sparkling idea is only that mechanism. And then we created a complete game that. But always thinking of what I want to create as a game experience with the people around the table.
At what point, after you have that first idea and you have that experience that you want to create, at what point do you make a prototype and sort of, take it out of your head?
The latest as possible. It's something which comes from my former job. I was working in research and development in a field where all experiences were very, very expensive. And when I was a young engineer, my boss always told me, Bruno, why do you want to make that experience? And I was explaining, etc. And he said, yes, but the rules of material sciences, you know these common rules. So are you able to project the result you would have in that field? And I say, yes, I think I should be around that, but we never explore. Yes, but he told me, So why would I spend money for something we know? Because of the general rules. If we want to explore a completely new field where nobody will have, yes, I pay. But if you are able to project what we will get, I don't pay. And that means that in my former job, I spent a lot of time just to think. And I do exactly the same with my games. That means that when I have an idea, I imagine game situation as long as it's possible to me to imagine how the games goes. And as long as I can imagine things which are not really interesting or some bugs or something like that, I just continue to modify the things, but just mentally in my head. And when all seems clear enough to be interesting, then I go on a prototype.
Yeah, and then you usually, I'm guessing you usually see some other problems that you couldn't foresee in your head, right?
Yes, for sure. But the thing is that in the main situation, the first prototype works. It doesn't work perfectly, for sure, but it works.
Yeah, that's some of the best moments are when you're able to foresee these things, because otherwise, I know a lot of designers who I've talked to, and I also in making games usually try and get a prototype out early, though I also try and think about it, but
but there is no good way and bad way to go. In fact, it depends of your personality. For me, this way to work is the good one, but it's adapted to me. But I'm working very often with Ludovic Maublanc, who is also a very good game designer. And he works exactly on the opposite way. As soon as he has an idea, never mind, he doesn't know what to do with that. He builds some components immediately because he needs to manipulate them and to create them. And during this creating way, he might, all the things comes clearer to him. So, and probably it's one of the reasons we are really good working together, because we have two very different ways to see the things. And when we mix them together, probably it's better for a project.
Yeah. No, it's
so I really think that everybody has to find his own way, not trying to imitate someone else. Just be confident on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's very, very well put. You really need to find your own way. Could you tell me something that I've noticed and something that I love in your games is your 2-player games, and because I feel like they're a real strong point that you have. Like Seven Wonders Duel is one of my favorite games. And could you tell me like the difference, or if there is a difference between designing a game for a larger player count and for 2 players?
It's a difficult answer, because in fact I don't really know why I'm connected to these games. It seems that the ideas which comes into my mind are mostly better when you play them only at 2 players. And it's not a choice. It's just probably because it fits with my own taste. Like I explained at the beginning of this interview, I'm coming from pure 2-player abstract games. That means that when I was from 10 to 20, I was playing quite only abstract games. And probably that into my creation, even today, it's a kind of scar. In fact, it's a result of probably the way I built my mind at this time. But frankly speaking, it's not a choice for me to build 2-player games. It's just a result of how my brain is connected. And it's also one of the reasons why it's interesting to me to work with other people, because if I was working alone, maybe I would build quite only 2-player games.
Can you tell me another thing that I find in your games is that you have turns that are very satisfying through, like, there's lots of combos that can happen. Again, I can give like Seven Wonders Duel as an example, where you can have a turn where you build a wonder, and then that gives you another turn.
Cool.
And there's a lot of interaction through blocking the other player and having those satisfying turns. How do you make it so a game has a turn that really feels important?
One thing which is important to me is that I really like direct interaction. I know that some people don't like that, but for me, in a game, I like when we can interact directly. I don't really like when everybody plays on his own things and you have only indirect interaction. So this is probably one thing which is connected to me. The other thing is that I think that the main engine which explains how a satisfying game is frustration. That means that we don't all have the same way to support frustration. But if you are too much frustrated, you don't want to play a game. If you are not enough frustrated, you don't want to play a game. And I always try to adjust the level of frustration at the best way, just to want to go again and again and again. So I try to give satisfying things on each turn to the people. And sometimes you can get a little more, but sometimes you don't have it, etc. And that means that you always want to go again and again, trying to make something just a little better than the other. And these really small steps, which are quite invisible, probably explain that you stay connected into the game, concentrated, and you are waiting with quite such an impatience to your next turn to try to do something else, etc. So I think that these small things keeps you connected to the games during all the time of the game. I try to do that. I don't know if I succeed each time, but my way is quite selfish. That means that I'm designing games for myself, for my own taste. When I propose a game to a publisher, it's not because I want to have one more game onto the market. It's because I love to play that game myself. So, and then I try to share that with other people. So when I'm satisfying playing a game, for me, it's okay. And I think that I try to share it.
And could you tell me about playtesting, about when you have that first prototype of a game, who you go to, and what kind of things you look for when you're testing out the game?
I have 3 different groups for playtesting. First one is at home. My girlfriend is a gamer. She is a gamer, really. Probably deeper gamer than she likes. And her daughter, which is 10, is also likes also playing games. So during the lockdown, for example, it was quite comfortable to me because I had to stay home, but we were always free to play test my game, so it was perfect. So this is the first circle, but for sure it's not sufficient because it's too much involved in it's too close, The second group is a group of gamers, which is in Annecy, 30 kilometers far from me, where I can meet, for example, Marc Paquin, other friends who are creating a publisher, who became publisher. It's Blam, the publisher. They published Celestia in France. There is also my son, which is 26 and which is also a big gamer. And these guys are more connected to game industry, etc., and with less affect. So that means that we can discuss very deeply into mechanism, into interesting. And the third circle is friends who likes games, but who are not involved at all in the game industry. So my close people, some technicians, I would say, about games, and some families. And when I mix with these 3 different groups, it helps me to have clear ideas. But I'm always participating to the game sessions, to the playtesting game sessions, because never mind of what other people are telling me, I always want to compare what they say to what I think.
So you participate in all the play tests. Then do you take do you do blind tests with your games where you give rule books to people, or is that something that the publisher usually takes care of? And how do you go?
I never do that on my side. When I give my game to a publisher, I give a full prototype with the rules which are perfectly written. Then we can discuss some adjustment for sure, but it's very important to write the rules and to be clear on the game experience you want to give. So I think that you have only one chance to make a first good impression. So I prefer to wait until the game is really satisfying to me before showing it to a publisher.
Having all of those projects at the same time, how much time do you take per day? How do you keep it organized? How do you keep them all moving? And are there points where you want to, where you have to stop a project?
When I'm working, when I said I have 15 projects at the same time, they don't are at the same level of development. That means some of them are finished. That means they will be published in a few weeks, but I'm still working on them. It takes me time just to play them again, to verify the files of the publisher, to make some communication on internet, on the social network, just to prepare them to arrive onto the market, etc. I have some other projects that are finished on my side as prototypes, but I'm looking for publisher. That means that it takes me time just to send the files, to verify if they have play tested or not, if they want some modifications, if all is clear. So that takes me some time. I have other games that I'm developing at this time. That means I have a first or a second or the third prototype, but I'm playing them, adapting the rules depending on the playtest. And I have also some sparkling ideas, which I'm just thinking, writing some notes, etc. And this makes all my day. And how to choose what to do, it depends mainly of what I want to do at the time and emergencies. Each day I have some things that I cannot postpone. I have to do yet. So the emergencies is what I'm doing each day. And then during my free times, I share my time between different things, depending of my own taste for which I want to do at this time. And depending on the time I have in front of me. If I have only small sequences, I will do small things. But when I have to go deeper into a project, I need time. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep this time just to do that.
Yeah, and do you have deadlines for yourself?
No. So no. I have deadlines when the game is signed and when I'm working with publishers. These are the deadlines which sometimes create some emergencies. But on the developing process for the development process, I have no deadlines. Mm-hmm. So I take the time I need.
Can you tell me about when working, like you said, some designers who you work with, you just talk to over email. Can you tell me how that process works when you're not in the same place and you don't get to see that designer so often in the game?
In fact, I'm working with a lot of different designers, and the process we have is different each time. Even if I am the same guy, that means that the duo has to find his own way to work together. And it's very different when I'm working with Bruno Feduti, with Serge Laget, with Théo Rivière, with Marc Paquin, etc. For example, with Bruno, it's quite if we are engaged into a race. That means he's working very, very fast. And that means that if I want to have a chance that my ideas come into the games, I have to be faster than him. But the thing which is really funny is that we designed maybe 5, 6, 7 games together. I don't know exactly. But we never played them together before the game was published. Because he's living in Paris, I'm living in southeast of France. And we have our own playtesters groups. Then we have some feedbacks, we change, etc. But the fact is that we never played a prototype together before the publication. Mm-hmm. With Serge Laget, it's something very different. To work together efficiently, we need to be together. Even if we are living far, we need to together. We need to have some eating, some drinking, some speaking about life, etc. And then we work together efficiently. But it's something really different. With someone like Théo Rivière or Corentin Lebras, we exchange a lot by mail, but with Messenger or by Skype. We make some Skype sessions or Discord, never mind the support, but we speak face to face with the video, and it's enough to take some decisions, and then we go back on our prototypes and we work together. And which is very interesting is the story of how we work with Antoine Boza. With Antoine, we don't exchange so much, in fact, and at a point we think that we have to be together, and because just to be sure that we want to do, because there are some blocking situations or we don't know what to do, etc. And when we have a meeting, it's crazy because it works that way since the beginning. I go by car to him. It's 2 hours and a half of driving. And when I arrived, we sit around the table, and 15 minutes, half an hour later, it's finished. Because all comes as it was evident at this time. It was not possible speaking together to find that situation, etc. But when we are together, all is as an evidence. It's very strange, and it's very interesting to work with this way for sure. So there is no real rules. You see, it will depend of the personality of each co-designer.
Mm-hmm. I love how you earlier when you said having other people to bring you out of your comfort zone, make games that you're not comfortable with. Do you feel that expands your scope of the types of games you make?
Yes, I think so, sure. And for the games themselves, but also for the stories, for example, I think that I would never have made a game like Imaginarium with this specific universe if I haven't worked with Florian Siriex. It's a game I'm very, very proud of, but sure, without Florian, I would never have made this game. Sure, definitively. So it's really a chance for me to be able to work with so different people. That's also one of the reasons I have to say that I'm really upset when players on the social networks or on forums, etc., just speak about my name when it's a co-design, because the result is not my games; it's a co-design. So I think that the best would be to respect the two designers. Sure, I have the chance to find. It's not a chance to be older, but I'm older. I'm on the market for more time, so maybe my name is more known. But please never forget my co-designers. They are involved as far as me in each of my games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing that you've been involved with so many people to make so many great projects, and I think that your involvement was able to bring out the best in a lot of cases because of your success rate, with games. Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe, but it's definitely. You're definitely right that it's a cooperative project. Especially like tell me what it was like working on a game like Conan, where you were, I think, 5 or 6.
Conan is different because the game was still existing, and the designer Frédéric Henry, asked us to develop expansions. So I was engaged to develop an expansion for a game system which was still existing. So it's a very different way to work. I was free to do what I wanted, but I had just to create an expansion. So it's not really innovative. It's like teaching a new chapter of a book, in fact. So all was there. It was not really difficult to do that.
And could you tell me how different it is when working on expansions or when working on games that versions of existing games, like with Seven Wonders, how you made the 2-player version?
Yeah, two different situations for sure. For expansions, I have to say that I never worked on expansions because my publisher asked for. I'm working on expansions just because I really love my games. And I play them long time after they are published. That means that, when I sign a contract, very often the game comes onto the market 1 year, 1.5 years later for the process. Okay. During this time, I go on playing the game again and again with my prototypes. And when you have played one game you really love 15, 50, 60, 100 times, sometimes you need more for yourself. And very often I'm working on an expansion just at the time where the game comes onto the market, just because I want more for myself. But it's quite the same amount of work to build an expansion than to create the former game, in fact. It takes time, for sure. And I do that not to get money, but just because I want. For example, it was exactly that for Five Tribes. Five Tribes, I paid so many times. And I wanted more and more and more just to refresh my own pleasure with the game. And so it has been the same for Abyss, for example. Mm-hmm. So it's the way I'm working on expansions. Concerning Seven Wonders Duel, it's something really different because all comes from Antoine. Antoine has been so successful with Seven Wonders. And he wanted to make a 2-player games just connected with Seven Wonders, just because there is a rule in the Seven Wonders games, but he never really liked these rules. And he thought that playing 2 players with this rule didn't give the players the game experience he really wanted. So he decided to make a pure 2-player games just to have the game experience he wanted. But he started alone, but he didn't succeed to do exactly what he wanted. And so he offered me during a flight to Gen Con to join him and to work with him on that project. So it was really different because it was a game still existing, but we have to adapt it to 2 players. And then we discussed together just what to do. And in fact, with this game, it was not so difficult, in fact. Just because, he had to keep all what was inside Seven Wonders. That means we had to keep the categories of cards, the science, the military, etc., etc. For the civil cards, for the blue cards, we had nothing to change. For the yellow cards, some slight adaptations, but it's quite the same. For the resources cards, nothing to change. But for the military, it couldn't work the same way. It was impossible. Just because if we are playing together at 2-player, I have not a right neighbor and a left neighbor. It's just you. So we had to find something else. And military, that means strongness. And it was pushing, and it was quite an evidence, in fact, to have this track for military. It was an evident answer to the problem we had to face, in fact. For sciences, since the beginning of the game, of Seven Wonders, I was not really satisfied with the way the green cards works. It works very well, but each time you have to explain again how it works, just because the scoring is for most of the people too complicated. So as far as we had introduced a first way to win immediately the game, I proposed Antoine to add a second way to win immediately the game, just to collect different symbols. And it was also quite an evidence in front of what we had to face, in fact. And then the third thing we had to change was the drafting system. Because, if you draft the same way as Seven Wonders, it doesn't work. It has no interest. There is no tension. I have cards. I keep one. I give you, but I take your cards. So immediately we know exactly all the cards. So it's not interesting. But when you look at the pyramid of cards, it's exactly the same, but on a different way. Because if I go first, I have the choice between 6 cards. I take one. I give you, it's your turn. You have a choice with 5. But when you take one, it reveals another one. It's a quite of drafting system where a part of your hand is exactly the same and sometimes it's a little refreshed. And so we kept the same feeling of drafting, but with something which was really adapted to 2 players. So we worked this way. We discussed about this during the flight. It took us maybe half an hour, 1 hour, no more. We wrote that on the book. And when we came back, we built the first prototype. And when we needed a lot of adjustment just to balance the game, but all the ideas were there still the beginning, because it was an answer to a problem, but with the best evidence as possible.
Yeah, and then you recently released a solo mode for the game. Could you tell me about working on what are the differences when working on a game that's for just one player?
The first thing I have to say is that mainly I don't like solo games. I don't like solo adaptation because in the main cases it's too complicated. But if an idea come, why not to offer a solo game? But it has to keep the same game experience. It has not to be a fully new game. It has to be really simple, and that's it. And for 7 Wonders, I found some solo version on internet. Some people building solo version and proposing them on, for example, on Board Game Geek, for example. But each time I had a look at them, I thought it was too complicated. So you have to simplify, really simplify. That means that you have the structure of cards. That means that your opponent has to take one card. Which one? The main, the main menaces are on military and science. Okay? So that means that you draw a card, explaining if your opponent choose this way or this way. Okay? And then you have priorities. If there is a green card, he takes the green card. If not, he go to a red, and if not, he takes the first card in this way or in this way, and that's all. And he never has to pay. He's always he always builds the cards. Always, always, always. He has no wonder to build, but you have some leaders with specific strengths, and so it's really difficult to beat, in fact. Mm-hmm. So you have to offer a real challenge. That means that in a solo game, it has not to be only a race for victory points. You have to be able to lose the game immediately, which is the case in the solo variant we made. It has to stay simple. It has to stay with the same feeling of game experience. And I think that what we did on the solo version works that way. Mm-hmm. It seems that the feedbacks we have are quite good, so I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah. And could you tell me what kinds of games you play in your free time that are not by you?
At this time, for example, we are playing Lucky Numbers. I don't know if you know this game.
I don't.
So it's a game by Michael Schart. It's fast, it's simple. I really like to play two-player games like Battle Line, for example. I'm also fan of games like Mainframe. But I have also, yes, I'm playing Unlock very often. I think I've made quite all the stories, all the boxes for Unlock. At this time, we are playing Splendor Marvel, the Marvel version, which is good, really. But 90% of my gaming times is dedicated to my prototypes.
Do you enjoy the time that you have with other games?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that I'm not playing enough. Yeah. I have not time enough to play. I would like to play more, in fact, but when you are working on so many projects at the same time, the free times is not so easy to find. Mm-hmm. That's also why I'm liking to meet other game designers, because I'm playing other prototypes, and together we also play other games. So, which is interesting to me.
Yeah. And do you? For the last time, I'm going back to your influences for a game. Do you find that when it comes to how many of your games do you think are influenced directly by other games?
I don't know, because I will never say that there was no influence, because for sure there has been an influence, but it's not really conscious. I feed myself with books, comics, movies, series, something I'm also reading. I'm not playing a lot, but I'm reading a lot of rules on internet, etc. So all this come into my mind, and sometimes there is an idea, but it seems to me that the idea is fresh. But for sure, it comes from all this influence. But how to say which one, etc. In the main situations, I don't know. Really, frankly speaking. But I have one situation where I know exactly. It's for Shadows of the Camelot, because at this time I played. My sister offered me for Christmas Lord of the Rings by Knizia. Mm-hmm. And I said in my head, well, exactly what I didn't want. Because I didn't want to play a cooperative game. For me, at this time, cooperative games were for children. So I'm a competitor. So why to play cooperative games? No interest. Lord of the Rings, at this time, it was before the movies. I never managed to read the book, because in my life, I tried 3 times to read this book. And each time I stopped after something like 80 or 100 pages, because it was so boring to read that. Then when I saw the movies, I find that interesting, but reading the book was unbearable for me. So I had no real wish to play that game. Mm-hmm. But she wanted to make me happy, and she bought that in the US. It was expensive, and I tried. And surprisingly, I was really captured by the game. This feeling to have this black block coming closer and closer. Yes, it was really surprising to me. And I played it again and again, but after 3 or 4 games, we knew exactly how to beat the game. So I was excited, but after some games, no more excited, because I knew exactly what would happen, because the game is linear. It respects exactly the book. So that means that the event comes always in the same order. Some things happen or not, but if you go the good way, you will beat the game. Mm-hmm. So it's at this time, I began to imagine that I would like to build a cooperative game where you would be free, and maybe without a pure cooperation, maybe with this idea of a traitor. And we discussed that with Serge. And he did the same analysis on his own, on his way, and he has started to create something, and he offered me to join him on the project. So Shadows of Camelot is clearly a consequence to have played Lord of the Rings by Knizia, clearly.
Yeah. All right, I want to get into some questions that were asked by other designers towards you. The first question is by Haralampos, who asks, after coming up with a main mechanism for a game, for example, Mancala on a grid, what is the process to find what might fit best for the game, enriching that main mechanism?
I'm not sure to understand the question.
I'm not sure either now that I read it. So when you come up with that main mechanism, the way I understand it, how do you find other things to add to it in order to make it work?
I don't know. In fact, for me, it's how to say. I don't isolate something. Mm-hmm. Sure that the main idea of Five Tribes is the Mancala mechanism. Then what to do with that? You have to offer something rich enough to keep the interest into the game, and not too complicated, not to be too difficult to learn. What I try always to do, mainly, is to offer the players some dilemma. On your turn, you need to want to do that, or that, but you only can do one of these things. So offering not too many possibilities, but wanted to make each of them. And when you have turn after turn this kind of dilemma, the game works by itself, in fact. Mm-hmm. So for example, for Five Tribes, we have 5 colors, and each color was connected. You have the green for the resources, for the goods. You have the yellow for just points. You have the blue for money, etc., etc. And each thing, it has to be valuable, depending on the situation. That means that you have some topography when you place the tiles, etc. So from one game to another game, the situation is not exactly the same. And when you have this kind of things into a game, it works by itself, and then you just have to balance all the things just to have something which is always interesting from the beginning to the end.
Mm-hmm. The next question is by Dimitar, who asks, how do you know when to simplify a game?
Very often, when you are a young designer, that means when you are designing your first games, you want to demonstrate all the world that you are unique. And very often, you want to put all your ideas into a single game. And very often, a first game is composed by 3 different games. So probably I did that at the beginning of my first creations. But today, I quite never have to simplify anything, because I'm always starting with something very simple. And then I just add some things if it's needed. So I go in the opposite way. I'm not simplifying some things. I'm creating something simple, and then I try to let it just at the sufficient level. So I do it on the reverse way, in fact.
It's very, very, very interesting. Jordan asks, which game made you most proud as a game designer?
It's also a difficult question, because like you can see, game designing is not my job, it's my life. Mm-hmm. And my games are quite as my child's. And you will never ask a father which of his child he prefers. But I can say 2 things. The first is that I have a special relationship with Five Tribes. just because it's connected to my own life with my son. We had some difficult time because of the divorce, etc. And he refused to see me for quite 2 years. And we reconciliate when I was building the first prototype of Five Tribes. And at this time, he became my first playtester and very good. And so that means that this game came into the market, was successful, and it was also connected to my story with my son. So that means that I always have some emotion with this game because of my personal way, more than the game itself. So Five Tribes will stay for sure all my life as something special. And the second game is here. It's not published yet. It's a 2-player abstract game. It's named Insert, and I'm so proud of this one. For me, abstract games are the quintessence of game design because there is no artifice. You cannot hide yourself with components, with stories, with anything. It has to be pure. And it will be published next year, I hope. And probably it will not be my most successful game because you know that abstract games are not so much well recognized on the game market. But on a pure game design, it's probably what I consider as my best game ever.
From the same person, he asks, is there an amount of games a designer should play before making a game? And we kind of talked about this earlier.
I don't know, but I think you have to play the most as possible for sure. And what was sure concerning myself is that one game changed my life. That means that I wanted to create a game for a long time, but I had no idea what to do, how to do, etc., what to begin with, etc. And I played Magic the Gathering a lot at this time, at the end of the 90s. And these games by Richard Garfield opened my eyes, and I understood a lot of things just playing Magic the Gathering, for sure. So this game created something special into my head. Maybe it could be the same for other publisher, or maybe for some other publisher it will be another game. I don't know, but for sure, Magic triggered something and helped me to become a game designer. Thank you, Richard.
This next question is by Tuomas. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Have you started a game design with only a theme?
Yeah, sure. My first game, Sanfonilwa, Lawless, I knew that I wanted to create something, but I had no ideas about the mechanism of anything. And I just knew that I wanted to make something into the Far West, Wild West. Okay. And I began to look at pictures that I could use to build my prototypes. I was just picking some pictures, etc., on internet. And during the process of picking the pictures, all the game mechanism came into my head at this time. So I began with a story, and then it became a game.
Chris Back asks, how do you approach playtesting these days, meaning with the pandemic?
First, like I explained, I have a chance to be locked down with my girlfriend and her 10 years old daughter, which are gamers. So that means that we are always free to play anything at home. So this is very interesting to me. It's a chance. And the second thing is that I'm connected on a tabletop simulator. And during the lockdown, I programmed a lot of my prototypes on tabletop simulator, and I was able to play test with my co-designers and then to present them to publishers. And during the lockdown, I signed 2 games, just presenting them to publishers by a tabletop simulator.
Okay. And the most asked question, this was something that I think many people asked, is there an expansion planned for Yamatai?
No.
No.
No, because I would like, for sure, because I like this game, but the chance we had was to be published by Days of Wonder, because that means that when you are published by Days of Wonder, you will always have really high quality components, etc. The game is wonderful. I really love the way it has been published. And this has the reverse side of that is that Days of Wonder belongs to Asmodee, and Asmodee wants to make only hits. That means that Yamatai was printed at something like 15,000 copies. They sold well, for sure, but not well enough for someone belonging to Asmodee. That means that they won't publish it again, they won't reprint it again, and they want us to work on an expansion. So, very nice component. It was successful for us, but not successful enough for that kind of publisher. If we had made the same game with someone like Bombix, for example, or another smallest publisher, we would have had a reprint, and we would probably had to work on an expansion. But with this publisher, it's not possible. So maybe someday, if another publisher wants to go back on that project, we could, because we have the rights back now, we could sign it with another publisher if someone was interested. So, hey, publishers, if you want Yamatai, it's free. And then we have ideas to develop it for sure.
Mm-hmm. This is the last question by Polly. Has your method changed over the years between your first and your last game?
No. Since the beginning, I'm working exactly the same way, just because I started to work on development of my games quite late. That means that this came after 18 years working in research, in development, in material sciences. And my way of working is exactly the way I learned to work in my former job. That means you have an idea, you developed it with some experience, plans, etc., etc. So it's quite scientific, in fact. And then when the answer is exactly the one you want, you have to write a process. And writing the process in my former jobs means today writing the rules. And so that means the method of working has been a long way learned, and it fits exactly what I need with my games. So I worked this way since my first game, and it's always the same today.
What would be the advice you would give to somebody who wants to start game design or has designed one game but is looking to?
I would say playtesting, and playtesting. So this is the first, really, really important. A game designer, someone who has to be able to listen to all the feedbacks he will have, but in all these feedbacks, he has to isolate it, which makes sense, and just to forget all the other things, because you have to do your own game, not the games of your friends. You do your own game. You have to keep your direction. A game designer is someone who creates a path. You don't have to analyze the market and try to make something which fits the market. No. Follow your ideas, go on your direction, and then drive the other people to come with you. Forget the market. You have to be confident in yourself, for sure. And you have to simplify always, not to make things too complicated, and just be patient. But what I mean is what I was saying before. That means that when you create something, you want to share it very fast because you are excited, etc. But you have only one chance to make a first good impression. It's very easy to contact and to present games to publishers, because never mind if it's your first game or not, you will have a meeting. They will look at your work. Be sure of that. They don't care to sign an experimented designer or not. They want to have a good feeling with a project, but you have only one chance. Because if your game is not solid enough, even if you come back 1 year later, they will keep in mind that it was not solid enough. That means take your time and present something that you are 200% satisfied. And then you will have your chance or not. But so, today there are so many new prototypes coming on the market. The publishers see hundreds of them. So take all your chance on your side, taking your time and presenting something 200% finished. This will be my advice.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It was just amazing.
My pleasure. I hope it was exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.